trying to gather up some information that I found and put it in the agenda.
Oh, okay.
So let me see if I can paste that. Is there a chat? Ah, there. I'll put it in chat. Ah, there we go. Here's a potential fellowship grant.
Ah.
It's about digital publication. Actually, it's also about digital work. In other words, we're completely working on a digital project. Unfortunately, this one is due the 9th. So
exactly. I'm like, oh,
very, very quickly if we wanted to apply. But they do have this annually, so we could apply for it for next year when it comes up again.
Mm-hmm.
If we can't get in for the 9th. So what was the other one I was looking at? There. There were two of them.
Okay, hold on. I'm scrolling down.
Yeah, the Mellon, let's see, this one is, application is due the 10th, and then the expected notification would be December, and then the project start date is February 2000. So we could plan on doing it for next year if we were still looking for funding.
Yeah, that's, at first I thought it was $5,000, but it's $5,000 per month.
Yes, it's actually, it's open to individuals though, so it would have to be one of us applying for it.
Oh, okay.
So I haven't found, I've got a whole list of them. I can forward my email to somebody's account if you want me to. It's from academia.edu.
Okay, yeah, you can just post it to our little list thing, if that's okay, to the ODeL list. Would you mind doing that?
No, I don't mind. I got to figure out how I can post it. It's an email. It's an email that's a list of grants and fellowships. So let me see if I can.
I mean, no. Just send it, forward it to the ODeL thing, to the.
Oh, to our email?
Yeah.
Okay. What's our email?
It's ODeL hyphen. Wait a minute, let me look it up because I'll say it wrong. No, it's not. Hold on.
Let me copy it.
Yeah, it is ODeL hyphen IRCEES.
I've got it. Good.
You got it?
Okay. Yeah.
But I never would have thought of the humanities, but this is excellent.
So I get this about every 3 months for purposes of having for my own purposes. So that would be really good. All right. So yeah, there we go. So I posted it. It should be there. And then I was adding, I also added it to I was trying to add it to the agenda for today.
Okay. And Gabriel was smart enough just to type the email in the chat box. I don't know why that didn't occur to me.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to post it at the bottom of the meeting.
Okay.
There we go. Control V. Potential. There we go. Okay. All right. So I was also looking up an article that I just got, and I was trying to put that in there too.
Oh, okay. Well, everybody is not here yet, so we got a minute for you to go ahead and do it. I think Yana is going to try to make it, and Philip are going to try to make it.
Okay.
Tom's not going to be here, and Atieno is not going to be here.
Okay. I do have, as far as time goes, if she wants to meet an hour earlier, that's better for me because I have to sneak out at 7:45 so I could get my daughter off to school.
Let me ask you this then. Gabriel, could you meet any earlier?
Did we meet any area? You mean with
No,
Annie,
I said,
or?
like right now we meet at 4. Could you meet at 3?
Oh, you mean this area like we can okay, it's most just 1 hour and it's only once a month. So yeah, I think so. I think we can meet area.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, I'm okay with meeting an hour earlier.
That's it. You can't go any earlier than that. That'll put you too early.
Right, but I can meet an hour earlier. I was doing okay with 6, and then it moved to 7, and I'm like, I got to get my daughter to school, and I have to be at work. Today I'm off,
Awesome.
but
That's because you went on daylight savings time, and we
right.
didn't. Yeah. So I got to make. So if all the people from the African side can move up an hour, then we will. That's what we'll do. We'll just move it back to what it was.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Beth, I don't know what you're printing, but this needs to stop. Okay. All right, have you had breakfast? Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I will try not to do that during the meeting, but I've got to get her moving and so on. And my husband's back on the East Coast again, so we're trying to work on that. Huh?
When are you moving?
We should be moving no later than July 1st.
Okay.
But I don't know if I'm moving to Georgia or to Pennsylvania, so it depends on whether or not I get the job in Georgia, and they're still throttling.
They haven't announced yet then.
They haven't even finished all the interviews.
Oh.
The school has put a stop to all hiring right now, and they've even canceled half the jobs that they put out for. But I know that the other one that I applied for hasn't been canceled yet.
Okay. Okay, good.
Just dawdling with the school. I have an in with the person who is hiring, so
okay.
he keeps me informed. But it's still one of those things where I'm going to have to make a decision come June 1st, which way I'm going, and it's like,
Is that Chuck Hodges?
Yes, Mr. Hodges. Yeah.
I think Yana is on. I keep trying to pronounce that I, and she told me to leave the I alone.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm waiting to hear on that, and I don't know who else my competition is. So
Okay.
yeah. We'll see what happens.
Hey, we'll hold good thoughts for you.
I'm hoping. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I could go either way. I don't know if I'm ever going to end up hired or not. It's very frustrating.
Don't give up yet. Can't give up. Okay.
I'm hoping that my being involved with programs is going to help.
Yeah. Yeah. I hope so.
All right.
That's in what city is that?
Which?
What city is that's Georgia Southern, isn't it?
Yeah, Georgia Southern's based out of Statesboro, but they have an extension campus in Savannah.
Oh, okay.
And they took over Armstrong Atlantic State University.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Unfortunately for Armstrong, they're also canceling out half their programs at Armstrong, and Armstrong is up in arms, and yeah.
Oh.
It's a very messy takeover.
Okay.
I have friends who are saying, what's going on? It's not fair. Quit taking our programs. Yeah.
Oh.
They're not happy at all. So let me put this other.
Okay. We are, Atieno put together the agenda for us for today. And so let's see, Control C.
Okay.
And the thing went blank.
Okay.
And there is the link to it for those of you who haven't seen it. What's it? Oh, that's where you're going. Okay. I'm sorry. Now I'm talking to my husband. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. So that's the agenda. And so we have 4 of us here. I think the only person that I know for sure that we're waiting on is, who is that? I can't believe how short my memory is. But there's another person who's going to come. And I'm not sure about Olaniki and the other person. Oh, I can't believe I can't think of his name right now, but I just can't. Hang Tao is not going to be here, so I'm going to put his name down. He's not going to be here. And the rest of you can sign in. And Yana,
Yes,
we're going to try to move the meeting back an hour.
that would be great.
Okay, so I just got to check with the people on the Africa side to make sure they can all go back, because when the time changed, we didn't change.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
so
I can probably, depending on when it is, so if it's a big problem for everyone, I'll try to figure out how to adjust my schedule.
I'll ask though, and because it's probably easier to go back than it is to go forward. So that's probably a good thing.
Okay.
If we had to do this on any day other than Wednesday, would any other day work, or is Wednesday the best day?
Any day usually works okay except Monday.
Okay, was that Ann?
Yes.
Okay.
Usually Tuesdays and Thursdays are better for me, or Fridays, but
Okay.
I don't,
Okay. What
my
about,
schedule is crazy anyhow.
okay, so we're gonna move it back an hour, but if we had to change the day and move it back an hour, would Tuesday or Thursday work for you, Gabriel?
Yeah, Tuesday and Thursday. No, yeah, I think they still work.
Okay. Okay. So that's what I'll run up the flagpole for everybody. And I should know something by our next, well, by the time our next meeting is scheduled. How's that? Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay. Okay, let's see what Atieno has on our agenda for today. There were a couple of things that we wanted to talk about, and one of them was to continue with our logic model to sort of see where we are, and the other was to talk a little bit about potential funding sources. Anne brought in one from the National Endowment of the Humanities, and that's the link that's in the chat box before the link for the agenda. And Olenigi has sent us something from the University of South Africa, and I was doing a search. They had a research program here at the University of Namibia, and it turns out that the Spencer Foundation funds, well, anyway, they would fund a collaborative project, and so would the Carnegie Foundation. So Carnegie already funds something here in Africa related to networking. And so we were thinking that we might be able to piggyback on that. And then Spencer is something separate. So those are just 4 sources. And then Ann just sent us some more in email. So maybe what we'll do since one of them is due on the 10th, we might want to look at that one. Maybe that is too soon for us, since that's when? Monday? Friday? Next Wednesday or next Tuesday. So anyway, so we would need to have a proposal for that. And then the funding. So I went to the bottom 2 first. So the bottom 2 things on our agenda was the funding. And maybe Oluniyi will get here before we finish for today. And the other 2 things on the agenda was the frameworks and the logic model, and then moving on to potential research questions. Has everybody had a chance to look at the logic model? Hold on. I wasn't here when the logic model was originally created, so I don't know who was here.
I was here and I looked at it already. I have added notes to the bottom.
Okay. Let me put the link into it so Gabriel and Yana can get to it. Maybe we can look at that together for a second.
This is really,
Also, I don't know whether this is something we want to do, so I'll add the link in that document on, but there's, the NSF has a cyber learning solicitation for January every year. I think they do collaborative proposals, but also I think it's an exploratory grant, so it might be good, but it does tend to be more on the cyber learning.
Okay. And NSF, this is something that I found out, Yana, the SBES division, social behavioral, whatever, they might fund something that even looks at culture of like online learning groups, because it falls under that. I guess it could be considered anthropological.
Yeah, no, I think so. And I think some of them are trying, well, especially NSF, I think they're trying to bring more the social sciences into the mix.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a much more involved effort. So we would have to, thinking about it now for January, or, having a few months, it would seem to work for that. So I can look into that if you.
Okay, so why don't we do this then? Why don't we plan our next meeting just to be a funding meeting? And today we sort of see how far we can go on this research sort of definition, because this is going to be requisite to the project anyway. So, Anne, you brought some, so we can talk about those, and maybe you send us a list, you can help us to conceptualize them. And then Yana, you can look at NSF, and Gabriel, if you know of some, and then our next meeting, we can just focus on funding. Because I really do think we're close to nailing a research project. I mean, we got to nailing the research project that we want to investigate doing. I mean, there's still a lot of work to be done, but I think we've come a long way. So I put the link to that logic model in there, and most of my notes I actually put in this logic model. And so it refers back to that other picture that I had and some of the frameworks that we had talked about. Does everybody have it, the logic model?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Anne, since you were here when the model was created, do you want to sort of walk us through it?
Okay. Let me share it real quickly.
Okay. And we're all looking at it too. So yeah, but it'd probably be better if you shared it with us. Okay. Hi, Philip.
All right.
And hi, Philip.
Hello. Good morning.
No, I want to share my screen.
Good afternoon, Philip.
I'm so sorry.
All right, where is share my screen? Let's see here.
Should be,
Yeah.
See,
you find
everybody's
it?
looking at it. I'm looking for share my screen.
Is that
If
at
you
the
hover
bottom?
at the bottom, if you hover at the bottom of your Zoom,
Mm-hmm.
there should be popping up some menu bar
Or it might be under your ...
or there.
Yeah.
Let's see, record chat,
Oh,
share.
no, there it is, right? There's a green box with a...
It's a green button.
Yeah, there you go. Sorry. Yana was
Yeah.
right. I was looking in the wrong
All
place.
right.
Oh, Angela, you don't have to say I was right. I'm always right.
Oh, okay. That's what we'll just say by default.
It's a joke, obviously, but I'm just saying.
No. When we're looking for an answer to something, we're going to just say Yana. Yana. Whatever she says, we are committed to believing. It doesn't matter. She said. Okay.
All right, so I don't know if I can do as well as our friend who created this, but let's see if we can do this. So we divided this out into, she divided it out into learning issues and needs, guiding frameworks, concepts and tools, assumptions, and desired outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Basically what we did was we went through, and as we talked about each of these blocks, we decided to go ahead and put notes at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
For any of the pieces and parts in here that we either wanted to add something or we wanted to add a block. I don't think she's added any blocks yet. But we looked at the learning issues, activities and performances, test scores, etc. Most of you can read this, but let me scroll in here. I cannot see this. It's too small. There we go. So experience and satisfaction, motivation, those kinds of things fall under our learning issues.
Mm-hmm.
Internal conditions and external conditions. Internal conditions are attitudes, beliefs, values, and we can even fall into cultural issues and things like that under internal conditions because they're personal.
Mhm.
And then the external conditions, age, gender, learning, environment. And then we added some things to this down at the bottom. We talked about technologically unprepared, lack of resources, accessibility, learning disabilities, etc. And then we moved on. The guiding frameworks were the cultural and learning technology frameworks, pedagogical frameworks, and learning analytics. Personally, I think we also need to look at the andragogical learning guiding frameworks as well, because we're talking about adults, not just children. So that's how to teach adults. Assumptions, content, learner characteristics, faculty characteristics, and, context and content. And then there's a whole bunch of miscellaneous things at the bottom that we've written in for content. And then the last one is, what are the desired outcomes for all of the parties involved? So learners, faculty, the SME, the resources, technology, etc. So as we went through and discussed it, we added our comments on the bottom. Between faculty and learner, we have a few of the same things. Technologically unprepared was one of our major concerns. Then we came across to lack of access to resources for learners. I think in some cases faculty have lack of access to resources as well.
Mhm.
Let's see. Little support for administration, responsibilities are burdensome. Does anybody have anything to add? I hate to just read it to you because you're sitting here looking at it too.
Okay, so did you walk us through that desired outcomes?
Yes, I did. Basically, it's the outcomes wanted for each of these pieces to the puzzle.
Okay. Those aren't the outcomes, but outcomes
No,
to be defined for each of those.
right. In other words, you would have desired outcomes for each of those areas.
Okay.
That's pretty much what this above is. These are the areas of concern. And then the notes in the bottom are the things that come to mind as we're working with those boxes. So those areas of information. So our assumptions are concerning context, learner characteristics, faculty characteristics. So those are the major headings, and then there are assumptions underneath those.
Okay.
And then there are actions underneath each of these boxes. That's what the information at the bottom is about.
Okay.
You know, what falls under these categories.
And what I did is I added a frameworks to cultural. So there's a framework for pedagogical frameworks, and maybe we can do this / andragogical.
Andragogical.
And there's a frameworks for learning analytics, and I added some frameworks for cultural. And we talked about a little bit last time that I don't know how many people have heard of it, but cultural historical activity theory is something that we can use to describe that whole system. And I think this last model captures that picture that I drew of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I think so cultural historical activities theory would allow us to, my mind just went blank, would allow us to describe let me see if I can open that. No, I can't for some reason. My link goes to the wrong place. It would allow us to, hold on, here we go. Ooh, what happened to the file? I think my file went away. Elements. Oh, okay. There it is. Let's see.
As you're looking, Angela, I also added under frameworks, learning design or instructional design, because I think
Okay.
We can make the jump to learning analytics, at least you can make it from just data, but I think our approach that we've been talking about is coming at it from learner needs and design. So I added that here. Is that what you guys talked about adding? Is that making too many assumptions, or?
Well, I think that, I think that if we're going to have a research project, we're going to need frameworks to guide how we look at whatever it is that we look at.
Okay,
So
got it.
I don't
I
see it as being wrong. So if we're going to look at the system as a whole and the roles and the responsibilities and the jobs of everybody in getting to a certain outcome, that cultural historical activity theory would allow us to look at the full system that takes us from the course development side to what happens in the classroom side. And so it becomes very involved, but that's a way to get descriptive about that. So that was one like system level cultural model. And I put a link to 2 articles there that can give you don't have to read the whole article, but that can give you just a little bit of insight on what those models are. And then there's something, we talked about, you talked about the individuals. So those individuals, so there's this big system that we're looking at and how everybody's culture sort of interacts in that system environment to create a new culture, which is sort of what chat will help us to capture. But then there's this notion of these individual cultures that we bring. And there are a couple of, there are some cultural models that actually allow us to quantify cultural characteristics of groups according to certain characteristics. And so there are 2 examples there of different kinds of model, different instruments that you can use to assess culture at the individual level. And then there are a couple of more that are built on this, but that change it a little bit. And then, there's already some existing literature out there on school culture, and school climate. And we may be able to use some of those climate instruments, or may be able to modify those climate instruments to relate to the online course environment. So those are, and of course there's the organizational cultural models. And so there are several cultural models that we can use to help us better understand what's going on in this big maze of course development to actual course delivery of an online course. So the question really becomes is, what do we want to know? What do we want to know about these environments? Why are we doing this? Why would we want to do a study that looks at this? At least that's sort of where I am now.
I think that's great. Thank you for all the resources. And I agree. I think narrowing down what is our research question in terms of all of this, and agreeing to one would be, I think, a good next step.
So I guess one way to get to one is just to start. Is it to start? Usually this ain't. I think we started with what's interesting to us, and I think that that's good. And so should we just start throwing out questions that we're interested in and sort of back in this?
Sure.
And maybe we won't have one. We may have multiple, but they'll be closely related. But it would be great if we had a big umbrella one. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anybody?
And maybe the umbrella one, Angela, might emerge from the specific ones too.
Exactly. That's an excellent. See, Yana is right.
Exactly. We all agree. We've made that. It should be in our minutes.
That's an excellent point. So yeah. So what kinds of things?
All right. So I shouldn't have said that, because now, Angela, you're going to be making fun of me every time.
No, that's excellent. Okay, so I'm committed to writing, and sometimes I think with my fingers, so I'll actually probably interject something as well. So what are some questions that we're interested in? They can be theoretical and they can be practical. And they don't have to be structured like a research question. Now we just want questions. What questions do we want answered? And we can shape them later.
I'm interested, and so I'll start throwing things out. Is that how you want us to do it, Angela?
Is that time? Yeah, that works for me, and I'll type them. Everybody could type their own, but I can type.
Okay. Well, for me, I'm really interested in how does institutional culture influence the kind of course culture, the design of that course. So therefore, how course design kind of relates to that course culture from the instructional designer perspective.
I like that question because it takes us from the very beginning to in the classroom. That's a great question.
Mm-hmm. What? Could you repeat that, please? I'm sorry.
Okay.
Well, I guess
Okay, go
I
ahead.
was.
Repeat it.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Who? I'm sorry, Miss.
I'm sorry. This is Philip. I had to join from two different areas because of technical problems. So, but if you could repeat that question or the question that you think that we should focus on.
Well, this is a brainstorm, so I'm not sure necessarily that we would want to, but my interest has been how does the institutional culture kind of influence the design culture, the instructional designers in generating a course culture, how does that flow happen from institutional culture and values that are at that level, and how do those influence how we design online courses? And then how does that you could do a follow-up question, how does that then influence, how the course culture gets generated or gets triggered or supported, however we want to talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I think that's well said. And I think that kind of encompasses or kind of narrows down everything that we've been talking about for the past few months and bringing it all together and what is going on in the organization that could support or thwart good design or just the nature of the instructional design in the institution. So
yeah,
yes.
I was at, go ahead.
So what are some of those smaller questions, Philip, that you say that this one brings together? I think it would be nice to write those as well.
Yeah, so, does the institution support this? Is there the technical know-how? Is there desire to do this?
Okay.
Is there, technological preparedness for this?
Yeah, I love that.
Mm-hmm. Are the learners, are they on board with it? That the program or the project that we're working on right now with Ukraine and Honduras, there's a group of students who are all about change in instruction, going online and just having that opportunity. But there are also a lot of students who are like, that's not for me. Why should I have to do this when I've been doing it this way this whole time? And I don't have to do anything else. So there's the point of view from the instructor and from the learner too, and as well as admin.
As you were talking, Philip, I was thinking a lot of, so I was at a small design thinking workshop at Elon a few weeks ago. And a lot of what we talked about there was, what is that top cover, where is that cover that the top, your administration, your institution provides for you to innovate, let's say. And then what is what is the theory of change? How are we approaching change? Because we know all of these factors are going to play into being ready to adopt, or being comfortable in an environment. So for me, it was also about, are we kind of saying, there is this new, what is our change theory here? What is our theory of change to make that transition? So as you were talking, I was thinking, are we talking also about prepared, being prepared to make a change, not just making the change?
Right.
That preparedness factor.
A preparedness, and as well as a willingness and to see the need for the change too.
Yeah. So are you willing? Are you motivated to? Do you see this as a valid thing? And then how can you be prepared to then move forward?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. And and then there's the Deci and Ryan's self-determination theory, where it is the decision to make the change autonomous. Do you feel related to these new methods? Are you connected to the new instructional strategies that are being proposed to you? Those also have a lot to do with the willingness and the ability for people to make these changes and their openness. So yeah, so that's why I kind of like that that umbrella, the organizational or institutional culture, and how it affects.
Yeah, I mean, you're also talking about, for me, as you were talking, I was thinking of the technology acceptance model and the ideas of perceived usefulness, perceived ease of use, especially on the technology side. You may be willing, but you may not be prepared because you don't have the skill set. So, it's almost as if there's multiple layers of different, because we're dealing with humans, multiple layers of trying to have a flexible theory of change that will meet the needs of where the people are at. So if a faculty member wants to do this but doesn't know how to get started, the system has to allow for that. If somebody's gung-ho in doing it and wants to move it faster and innovate in different ways, the system has to allow for that. And I think that's been the challenge in my world for the last 15 years, is that we account for different things, but it's very hard to account for all the different needs.
Yes.
So.
Yes,
Okay.
I work in the university's teaching and learning center doing faculty development.
Yeah, me too, yeah.
And I also have a few projects dealing with faculty in other countries, and the issues that my global colleagues are talking about are very similar to the ones that I deal with, creating workshops for departments to get on board with something new. And then there's those people who are stuck in the ways, the people who are not prepared, the people who just have that the anxiety to move forward, and so that's that dynamic within that bubble affects the implementation and the willingness to change. So great.
And I'm doing the writing, but this is a Google Doc. The whole purpose of a Google Doc is everybody can write. So feel free to write.
We'll do that, Angela.
Yeah.
Because you're right.
Okay, Yana. So Gabriel, what are you thinking? You haven't said anything about a question. What kind of questions would you like to see answered? See, Gabriel Lee, there he is. Oh, that's you writing that? Okay. Oh, assessment strategies.
Gabriel is writing, Gabriel is busily writing.
Oh, he's writing his question. Assessment
Yes.
strategy. That's interesting. That's a big discussion on our campus right now.
I'm going to share the screen again so we can all see it. Let's see here. That one.
Excuse me 1 second. I'll be right back.
Okay.
So I guess one of my questions is, a lot of these questions have been answered. So how do we pull them back into culture? I have, it's called online learning. All you need to know to facilitate and administer online courses. It's a very small book, but it has some good models in it. I can put the title and the author out there. Let me go back up here. I'll put it up here.
I think, so I agree. I think all of this, it's not that there aren't any answers out there. There's not any research out there. I think what, for me, the biggest factor that is always a variable, is never a constant in all of this, is culture. And it's at the different levels. So, and that's why I think it's very hard to come up with one model of, it will work here and it will work there and it will work everywhere, you know, and that I think, you know, doesn't account for institutional culture, you know, a course culture. So I think there is a spin there. So we know how to do online learning, we know how to design courses, but if we don't account for this huge variable, they're not necessarily going to meet the needs of the learners of all of those pieces. So there may be great courses, but they may not work. So how do we kind of think about that in that context, in those models, is where I'm coming from.
There's a lot of content that our department shares with our colleague in Ivana Frankivsk, and the project that we did last summer, the summer before. It's great content for here in the States, and some people in Britain and Germany have used it, no problem. Once I went over there, it was very novel. She thought it was, you know, it was really great, but it didn't fit the culture. It didn't fit the needs of what the department needed, what the students needed, and therefore, you know, we have some really great resources, but we're adapting it for their use, and what would so that they could get the best out of it, instead of just saying, hey, here's an online course, pretty good, students should take it.
Yeah, no, so can I throw out a research idea, a more concrete one, Angela? What if, because we're recognizing the fact that culture is a huge variable, and what if we did more of a scan, let's say, where we look at different institutions, and we have a protocol of questions, and we talk with whoever, you know, we identify in that protocol, and then we look at the interviews we do in terms of how does culture influence how you approach online learning, and we do a qualitative analysis of the interviews and see what factors are emerging out of from these different contexts and different institutions.
Well, I hate to say this, but I think you're right again. And I think we are.
Oh my God. Are you kidding me, or are you making fun of me? Or
No, but I think that's what we're in a prime position to do, because we got people from African countries who are looking at these issues. And then we got, and the African countries, even though they're all Africa, they're all different. They're even, the cultural constraints
yeah.
are even different. And then in the U.S. too, just because it's U.S. doesn't mean that it's all the same. And what we might be able to do then is to begin to tease out some similarities and differences. I did a sort of a cross-cultural study with this guy in the UK. We looked at the adoption of course management systems. So basically the adoption of institutional course management systems. And it was very, so we did 4 U.S. institutions, now 4 U.S. programs and 4 UK programs. Even though, so the UK programs were all in the same school and the US programs were all in the same schools, but the programs were different. And it was just very interesting to see how people navigated the course management system maze and why people chose to adopt it and why people in the same institution may have adopted it but taken a different approach to it. So I think that there's a lot of value in leveraging the different environments that we're in, answering the same questions, answering the same research questions, using very much the same instruments, and then begin to do some kind of compare across those to see what we can learn and tease out more about cultural differences. I think that's the value that this group brings. This culturally
I love
diverse
that.
group. Yeah.
I love that, especially if you already have a protocol that we could adapt even. If we can't adopt it as is, we can discuss that. But I think it gives us leverage then to say, we've done our scan. We don't just talk about this. We've actually done work around it to really hone in on what are these differences and what are the commonalities. And I think we know it because we've been in the field for so long, but it's not easy to pinpoint. So I love the idea, Angela, that you already have also a protocol that we could potentially use.
Now, I'm sorry. Everything that we did was qualitative. So I think we need to balance some qualitative, and that was the thing that we thought about when we finished our study, but we didn't have that big enough. So who we didn't consult in our study were students. And I think that if we're going to do this, we have to include students.
I agree.
Yeah. So we did the designers, we did the administrators, and we did the teachers, but we did not include the students. And so I think that that's going to make it a much more robust study. And in order to get that student data, we're going to need some established protocols. I got interview protocols that we can work with, but we're going to need some established instruments that we can use to work with our students and maybe think about doing some other things along the way. But I think that's the way to go. I think that's how we get funded too.
I have a suggestion too. There's an online Delphi study protocol that's really easy to add your questions to. You send out invitations to come and answer the questions on the study. And then we don't have to do face-to-face interviews. We can interview whoever we want all over the world.
Oh, there is.
I beg your pardon?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was thinking out loud, and I can just put this in the notes. But there's a small group information gathering that we also do, where we just do small groups of students within a course and get their feedback. Let them know that it's anonymous. The instructor will not know who is saying what, but we'll receive feedback at the end of midterms, basically, a few weeks after that, to see if any changes have been made, and then at the very end of the course, and provide that feedback to the instructor so that they know, and it's on a voluntary basis, so that the instructor, if the instructor wants to see if they're effective, then they will receive that instead of some sort of like the end of the semester course evaluation, which is, we have found not to be too effective. But it gives them the midpoint, and we give that information to the instructor, maybe make some suggestions on how to adapt or modify the course, and then at the end, look at the evaluations again and assess the course as a whole. So, yeah.
Oh,
Sorry.
well, I don't want to lose Ann's comment and yours as well, Philip. But Ann, when you're talking about this Delphi method, what we would be seeing, it would be something along the lines of, what do you think are the most important things in online learning, or something like that? And then you would see, you would send it to lots of people, and you would be able to sort it by whatever. Well, you can also do a couple of instruments, but you would be able to look at what
You can do all kinds of things with it. There's Likert scale. There's
but what would the question be that we're trying to answer with the Delphi study?
well, you can literally ask. You put your research question out, and then you ask these other questions. Is there technical know-how? Are you motivated to learn online? You would create the questions based on the culture. So you would create cultural questions to ask.
I've always thought of a Delphi study as being like a consensus instrument.
It is a consensus instrument, but it can also be used just to ask the questions. It's a very good way to produce I found it to be much easier to use than, say, in vivo or hyper research, because I can eliminate to know who's answering the question and simply see who's making the suggestions for what. So you'd find out really fast whether or not culture is affecting their course, and two, what things influence their course, what kind of cultural things influence their course.
So is this article you put here, the state of e-learning in low and middle income countries, is that a use of the Delphi method to figure this out?
No, I added that there after Philip was talking. So this is Jana talking.
Oh, okay.
No, that's an article we did a while ago, a few years ago, where we did a semi-systematic literature review around e-learning in low and middle income countries. And then when I was working with the medical schools in sub-Saharan Africa, so I just added that because it talks about technology acceptance and all that. So okay. I just put that under technology adoption. So
okay, I'm going to move it up because I added something above it. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. You moved it up. Good. Okay. Yeah. Now, Philip, I think what you were talking about made me think about, we always talk about everybody always thinks about student outcomes. But it might be interesting to also look at instructor outcomes based on this notion
I agree.
of culture. And so, everybody wants to. Well, we gotta look at student outcomes, or nobody's gonna be interested. But I would be, but nobody's gonna give us any money. So I think that if we looked at instructor outcomes as well, that would be interesting. Okay. Okay.
Is Oleini with us today?
Olaniyi? I don't think he's here. He wasn't here when we started.
Okay. Well, he has been in contact with Dr. David Williams, who has been assessing instructor outcomes based on the SGIF that I was discussing earlier. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't sure how far they have gotten into their discussions. I know that they met a couple of times via Zoom, and but I think that he would also have a little bit to contribute on that end, and and the ideas that perhaps he took away and is considering implementing it at his university. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we can catch up with him next time.
Okay, wait a minute, I just made here we go. Sorry, I just messed it up. So, okay. Now, Gabriel, you need to say something about this assessment question. I like that assessment question, but how do we, I don't know, what does everybody else think about? And assessment is such a There's institutional assessment. It's such a big umbrella. What do you think about that assessment? How are institutions?
Excuse me. I'm sorry to cut you off. This is being recorded, right?
Right.
Okay. I didn't realize it was 9:55, so I have to get to campus.
Okay.
I have a class to teach, so I will just pick this up in the video. So
Okay.
okay, it was nice seeing everyone today. Take care.
It was great seeing you too, Philip.
All right. Oh, and how's Namibia?
Oh, Namibia. It's great.
Awesome.
I get to see Gabriel in person at least once a week.
I'm sorry?
I get to see Gabriel in person at least once a week.
Perfect. All right. All right. Bye, guys. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
All right. Bye-bye.
You know, I think we've actually come up with 3 or 4 great big questions that we can wrap this around. I don't know.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I think, you know, how do you want to proceed in between now and our next meeting? Should we categorize them? Should we, or do you want to wait until the next one to kind of refine them?
I actually think that we got 3 big ones right here. Because I think that a lot of them fit under each other. So we got that institutional culture on course culture, which covers a lot of ground. And then we got course culture and student outcomes. And then we got course culture and instructor outcomes. And then we got this assessment that I don't know what to do with, that's some of that we need to work on. I don't know. I don't know. What does everybody else think? We got 5 minutes to figure out what we're going to do next. Is our next step to refine? Maybe our next step is to think more about the questions, Yana, and everybody. What do people think about her suggestion? Is anybody here other than me?
Yeah, I am. I don't know if anyone else.
Yeah,
No, Gabriel's here too.
Well, you know, sometimes Gabriel has his computer on, and Gabriel's not a bit more here than the man on the moon. Gabriel, you're muted. Are you here? Gabriel's not here. If he is, he's in a meeting. I don't know. I'm loving these questions, Yana. I really think this.
I think maybe all we do is what you just said. Maybe put the Uber question we think is the umbrella one. Put the bullets, 2 bullets of the sub questions below, and get people to reflect on them maybe next time, and then we move forward.
Okay, I'm going to put these are the ones that I have. I'm putting them at the top now in the table. Would you agree?
Okay.
I don't know how to do that assessment question, but I think that that's important, and maybe it's embedded somewhere else. But I think I don't know. But I think that there's something to that. I don't know what it is yet.
Yeah.
What do you think about the 4? Which ones are?
I think they're fine. I think they're still big. I tend to start at a lower level to be so, but it's because I already know what to focus on. So
okay.
but I think as umbrella questions, they're great.
Okay. So what we can do is we can begin to then maybe, what did you say, drill down, have people to reflect on these questions and maybe drill them down some more? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, depending on how much, if we're, well, I like to, I mean, I'm kind of ready to move forward with the idea that you proposed, the protocol you use. Let's reviewing that. Okay. Let's see if that's a methodology we want to adopt, whether we add Delphi into the mix. I wasn't sure whether we're, and then to kind of what are our criteria for deciding which universities we're going to focus on?
Excellent. I think you and I are on the same page. So basically what you're going to do is look at these questions and think about what models or what kind of research design we would use to answer them.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, okay. I think we're
And
on
if
the
you,
same
if you want to, is that article you mentioned on the adoption of the LMS,
I'll put
somewhere
it.
in your
I'll put it
documents?
in the folder.
Okay, that sounds great
do
because
that.
then we can look at the methodology you used.
Okay, great. I can do that. Okay.
Okay.
This is wonderful.
So, talk to you next month.
Okay, I'll add up 3 weeks and I'll send an email. Great.
Okay, sounds good.
Bye-bye.
Bye.